Hello everybody, it's me Rachit back here in another new video, and in this video I'm going to be telling about the fundamental genetical components such as DNA, chromosomes and nucleotides and also genes. So the reason I'm doing this video is because I am looking forward to create a course, not a paid course, just a free online YouTube course, and basically a playlist with a list and a series of videos regarding gene sequencing, genomic sequencing and bioinformatics. So without further ado, let's start with this video. So this will be the first video in that course, and I'll create a playlist so you can see all of the videos there. So the reason I want to do this video, because this is not genomic sequencing or bioinformatics, this is genetical components. The reason I want to do this video is if you know these genetical components, it will be easier for you to understand and comprehend more well in the course later onwards, because if you need to know the genetical components. So yeah, so I created a small notepad here. So concepts which will be covered throughout this course. These are the concepts which will be covered throughout this course. The course name is Bioinformatics and Genomic Sequencing Basics. To be honest, I won't even use the word course. I'll use the word learning, right? This is the learning I will be providing for free. So Bioinformatics and Genomic Sequencing Basics. So I'll be teaching the basics of this because I'm also exploring a lot. So fundamentals. So we are going to be covering fundamentals first, the fundamentals of gene sequencing, how it's actually done, and to give you a foundational understanding, so later onwards obviously you can understand, right? So next, NGS sequences and Sanger sequencing. You don't need to know this right now. I'll tell you in the later parts of the playlist. So after these fundamentals are covered, you would know what these are, so don't worry about that if you're not familiar with these terms. So after that, bioinformatics formats. So these are different types of formats in bioinformatics which bioinformaticians use, such as FASTA, FASTQ and etc. BCP. So, and also the last part is the hardest part, which is the algorithms. So the different types of algorithms which we use in bioinformatics to analyze genomes and so on. So these are the topics I'll be covering in this playlist or learning. So yeah, without further ado, let's start with genetical components. So let's just do that. So these are the, I have typed fundamental genetical components. So these are the fundamental genetical components. We're gonna only be doing DNA, genes and chromosomes, and also nucleotides, which is an extra one which I added, so you can get a better idea of what DNA is. So basically, and there's alleles and heredity as well. So this is also a major component, but I won't be covering it in this playlist, in this video, because it is not needed for the future gene sequencing and bioinformatics playlist I'm going to be creating future videos. So this isn't needed, so I won't be covering this as for now, but maybe in a later video, if you guys want me to cover, I'll definitely do it. So yeah, so let's go to the first component we're going to be learning about, which is gonna be DNA. Now before we move on, the thing is, you might be like, oh, it's DNA, who doesn't know that? I mean, everybody does. But the problem is DNA, genes and chromosomes are kind of similar. They're kind of similar. So people cannot vary it properly, and a lot of people fail to do that. So I want to bring awareness of what all of these are, because they seem similar when we like skim on them, but they're actually pretty different. So DNA. What's a DNA? DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. So it's a type of nucleic acid. So DNA is basically a molecule in our body, in our cells, in our these tiny little creatures living in our body, not necessarily creatures, but tiny small, it's thinner than our hair. So these cells, in our cells, there's a DNA which is called deoxyribonucleic acid. You don't need to remember that, just a DNA. So that's why short forms were invented. So these DNA live in our cells, and in each cell there are something called organelles. These organelles are basically organs, but in a cell it's called organelles because they're tinier. So these organelles, such as nucleus, there's one organelle called the nucleus. The nucleus basically is the instructor. It instructs other organelles to do tasks. Like the nucleus is like the head, the lieutenant, which orders commands for other organelles to do. So it's like the toppest tier. So this nucleus, in this nucleus organelle, there is something called the DNA. Right now we are seeing. So this DNA is a molecule. It's a very small particle. So not a particle, sorry, molecule. So this molecule contains information on our genetic, on our body, on our traits, and etc. Let me give you a simple example so you can actually comprehend. So suppose my height, suppose my because everybody looks different. I don't look like a random person out on the street, and you don't look like me, hopefully. so people, we all don't look alike, and what distinguishes us is DNA. So this DNA basically contains the information on how a person should look, their strength, their intelligence, their power, and all of those kind of stuff, their height, their eye color, their hair, and etc. So this DNA molecule contains all of that information. So this information is then translated and transcribed. You don't need to know about that, but yeah, the DNA contains all of that information. So let's take a look at the DNA structure. Okay, so this is how a DNA looks. Like with the naked eye, you can't even see it. It's literally very small. It's tinier than atoms. No, it's not tinier than atoms, but it's almost as small as atoms. So that's how small DNA is. You can't even see it with your naked eye. So this is the DNA. What is this? Okay, so this DNA structure. So this is how the DNA looks. If you look closely, it literally looks like a ladder which is twisted, like those tweezers. So this basically looks like a ladder which is twisted. So there's another name for this shape. It's called the double helix. So yeah, and this is like a twisted ladder. So what does this DNA actually contain, right? It contains these nitrogenous bases and the sugar phosphate backbone. I'll tell all of those in detail in nucleotides, alright? Which is the next small topic we're going to cover. So I hope that you understood what DNA is, and yeah, it's very simple. Now let's go on to the second slide or image, which is nucleotides. So this is a nucleotide. Rachit, what are you even saying, man? What the hell is a nucleotide, right? I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Well, okay. So what actually is a nucleotide? So you see these DNA, right? This DNA isn't made up of air randomly, right? It is made up of these smaller building blocks. So DNA is already very small, but there are smaller components in this DNA which actually make up the DNA, and it make this weird shape like this twisted ladder. So these nucleotides, in simpler words, these nucleotides are the building blocks of DNA. So these nucleotides are what makes DNA. So a deoxyribonucleic acid. So these nucleotides. So all of this is bunch of nucleotides together to make this DNA. So this nucleotide contains of 3 parts. Yes, DNA is very small. Again, there is nucleotides. Again, in the nucleotides, there is again smaller components. It's never ending almost. So 3 parts of a nucleotide. So there are 3 components in a nucleotide. This is just like structure of nucleotide. So there's the base. This is called the nitrogenous base. That's just a fancy word for a base, so just call it a base. So it's called the base. This is the sugar, and this is the phosphate. Now, what are all of these stuff? So these bases, basically there are 5 types of bases. One type is adenine, second type is guanine, third type is cytosine, fourth type is thymine, and fifth type is uracil in RNA. So forget about the fifth type. So these 4 types, A, G, T, C. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard these letters. So the long forms are adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. But just remember the short forms. So A, G, T, C. Excuse me there. Sorry. So A, G, T, C. So these A, G, T, C, these are smaller molecules in a nucleotide. So see, guanine, cytosine, thymine, and adenine. So this base of a nucleotide is all of these A, G, T, C. So what are these letters? These letters is what actually makes us. Basically, it's what makes my hair color black, it's what makes your hair color brown, it's what makes my eye color brown, it's what makes your eye color blue, green, etc. And everybody is beautiful as the way they are. So these so basically these small letters, different combinations of these letters actually make our hair, our eye color, our skin color, our etc. So these combination of these bases, basically, so different combinations of these bases actually creates our eye color, our eye shape, and etc. So these are the bases. And the next thing is sugar. So the sugar, what is the sugar? It's just a normal small piece of glucose, basically small piece of glucose. Sugar in scientific words are glucose. So this is a small piece of sugar, not the edible ones, but small piece of sugar which connects the phosphate and the base. It connects these two. It forms the link between these two. It's like the middleman. It connects the phosphate and the base together. So what's the phosphate? Phosphate is basically a smaller component in the nucleotide which creates that ladder shape. Let me just see. So you see this like, not the inside of this, you see this like curvy lines. That is actually called the sugar phosphate backbone. So these two inner components together, sugar and phosphate together, create the sugar phosphate backbone. To make it clear, I actually have a clearer image here. So see, this is the sugar, this is the base, and this is the phosphate group. So this phosphate group also connects one nucleotide to another. So basically look, and there are hydrogen bonds between these base pairs. So yeah, what are base pairs? Sorry, I'm sorry. So what are base pairs? Base pairs are basically pairs of these nitrogenous bases or bases. So remember this base pair rule. Adenine A always connects with T, thymine, and guanine G always connects with cytosine C. So A connects with T, G connects with C. A cannot connect with C and vice versa. So it cannot be done. That's just the rule that the nature has kept, the laws of nature. So I hope you understood what are base pairs. So look, A always with T, G always with C. See, this is a pattern here. So yeah, the sugar connects phosphate group and the base together, and the phosphate groups, the phosphate and sugar together create like the backbone, like this curvy line here, the backbone of the DNA. Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to check if my mic is not muted. So yeah, I hopefully you get what that is. So this is just a in-depth picture of what it actually is, and yeah, this is how it's formed. So these inner components are all the bases, and sugar and phosphate create this curvy line, the double helix shape. So yeah, that's what our nucleotides are. In summary, nucleotides are basically the building blocks of DNA molecules. So yeah, so DNA in short is basically a bunch of nucleotides together. So yeah. So now that we're done with DNA and nucleotides, all we have left is genes and chromosomes, which are very easy to understand because these are the bases and these are just built upon these. So gene. So genes are like, let me put it very simple. They're like segments of this DNA molecule. So genes are basically DNA, but they are segments in the DNA molecule. Let me just show you again with this example. So actually, wait, this is better. So as you know, this is the DNA, and these are the bases. Remember, we talked earlier. Right now, C, G, T, A, yeah, and the sugar phosphate backbone. So this is the DNA as we discussed earlier. Same picture. Yep. And these look at this, as it says gene. So this so I can't so this segment, this particular segment, like this circle for example, this is one gene, and this circle for example, this is one gene, and this circle for example, this is one gene, and so on. So this is one gene, 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 this is one gene. So these segments, specific particular segments in the DNA, encode to genes. So they're basically genes. Genes are basically segments in a DNA. That's it. And these genes are then later translated into proteins. So basically these genes contain the information for everything in our body, such as, let me give an example. My height is 5'9". Yes, I'm pretty short. So my height is 5'9", and these segments of genes, these like this one gene defines my height. So the combination of these bases define my height. So these genes, so like one gene, there's like many genes. For example, there's a gene which determines your height, and that gene, like the combination of these words create the gene, and this particular gene creates proteins, and it determines your height. So these proteins for like melanin, like your eye color, your eye shape, so it creates the proteins for those. So yeah, these genes are later translated into proteins are later translated into many other stuff, eye, legs, hands, and everything. They're basically the tissues and high level. So yeah, so genes are basically the something which defines us basically. So yeah, it's similar to DNA, but genes are more specific and particular. There's segments in them. So yeah, hopefully you understood what it is. So yeah, DNA, nucleotides, so genes. So basically, so now that we're done with DNA, nucleotides, and genes, now let's move on to chromosomes. So now this might look scary. Oh my god, what the hell is this? What are these? What is centromere? What is long arm? Telomere? We don't need to know about these. Don't worry about that. But I'll also tell about some of these. So basically, as we discussed, the DNA here. Now the DNA isn't just one strip. There's a huge strip of DNA, and I don't remember, but there's a fact, I think, like if you took out all of the DNA in our body, it's longer than like 10 kilometers or something. So yeah, that's how much DNA we have in our body. Like that's how long the strands of the DNA are, the strips, the strands, the strings of the DNA are. So yeah, so basically that's how long the strands of the DNA are. I mean, obviously they're small, so they fit into our organelles in our cell. Organelles are the organs in our cell, basically. The L's is just added. So yeah, as we discussed, so yeah, this is the huge strand. Now this huge strand can't just randomly sit in the cell. It's too big for the cells to keep and store it. So these DNA are compressed. These strips are compressed. They're wrapped around proteins. And these DNA are wrapped around proteins. Oh, once again, is my mic working? Okay. So yeah. So these DNA are wrapped around proteins. These proteins are called histones, and this DNA, since it can't just loosely just stay in the cell like that, it needs to be compressed into something called the, you guess it, chromosomes. It needs to be compressed into those. So chromosomes are nothing but proteins wrapped with DNA. So basically, let's go to the visual here. So you see this, right? This is all just DNA. This is just all DNA actually. So as you can see, chromosome, and this is, see, it's all DNA. So yeah, basically chromosomes are made up of proteins. Proteins are like a molecule, a small piece of like tissue, for example, on a high level. It's just a small piece of that, and they're called histones. We don't need to know that, but they're called histones, and they're wrapped around the DNA so that it can be more structured in order of just loosely staying in the nucleus, which will be very messy and stuff, cluttered. So it's compressed into something called chromosomes. So these chromosomes are inside the nucleus, and so as you can see, C, G, T, A, again these are coming. These are called the nucleobases or nitrogenous bases, or the best one, my favorite one, bases. So yeah, these are like the different parts. Basically, the centromere is the center of the chromosome, where like the most concentration of DNA is. Basically, a lot of DNA is compressed in there, obviously, because it's connected. And telomeres are like sticky caps, not sticky actually, repellent caps. So these are like caps, like for example, we wear socks, so that we are so we wear socks, right? They're basically caps for our foot. So these telomeres are basically caps for the foot of the chromosome and the hands and everything. It prevents one chromosome from sticking to another chromosome, because there are total 46 chromosomes in every cell. In every cell there are 46 chromosomes. And why 46 chromosomes? Because our DNA is that long and it can't just be compressed into one chromosome. So there are 46 chromosomes. It's called diploid, and this haploid and everything, but we don't need about that. We don't need to know about that as of now. I'll obviously make a video later for sure, but for now we don't need to know about that. So hopefully you understood what chromosomes are on a high level. So yeah, look at this little boy. Okay. So hopefully you understood what DNA is. It's basically a molecule, a nucleic acid, a molecule in the nucleus, and nucleotides are the building blocks of this DNA molecule. And the genes are basically segments in the DNA. It's basically these circles in the DNA. And chromosomes are basically small proteins wrapped around with DNA. So yeah, everything circles around this one word, DNA, around these three letters. Everything circles around it. So even if you forget about these, no problem, because if you remember about this, at least you can always rebuild your understanding and memory, because these are all based around this. So it's like, yeah. So did we cover everything? I'm sure we have. So yeah, this video doesn't come under any of these. This is just so that you have an exposition of what's actually happening later in these videos. So that's it for today's video, guys. Yeah, it's a very long video, if I'm being honest, but I'm happy it's long, because this is something that everybody needs to know and nobody should struggle with. Because personally myself, I kind of got confused when I saw some like videos. So that's why I don't want that to happen again. I want this to be the perfect video for everybody. So yeah, with that being said, I think it's time to wrap up today's video. Hopefully you guys understood what all of this is: genetical components, fundamental genetical components. So yeah, that's it for today's video, guys. I'll see you later in the next video, and please subscribe and like. I would really appreciate it. And yeah, see you.